Bedahar Nadia approximately 40 times and cut her throat.
As I was putting my vehicle in park was when the first shot rang through Sergeant Topham's police car. And in the time it took for me to get to Sergeant Topham's police car, Bedahar had already put 3 rounds through that car.
22-year-old Nadia El-Dib had only been dating Adam Bedahar for a few months before she noticed some red flags and decided to break up with him. Unfortunately, that would not be enough to protect her from a controlling, deranged killer who was hell-bent on making her pay. What followed was a series of chilling events that would end with 2 people dead and several police officers injured. The details in this case are both shocking and troubling, but what I find to be the most frightening part of it all is that no one saw it coming. On Sunday, March 29th, 2018, at around 9:30 a.m., police in Calgary, Canada responded to a disturbing call about a body of a woman lying in the backyard of a home. The victim was in her early 20s and appeared to have been brutally murdered with knife wounds and bullet wounds all over her body. Clearly, the person who did this to her had some sort of vendetta towards her. Investigators believed the woman had been dead for hours before anyone found her and called for help. Several witnesses had reported hearing a woman screaming earlier that morning, followed by sounds of gunfire. As police were trying to figure out who the victim was and what had happened to her, a family across town was frantically searching for their missing loved one.
And my mom started blowing up my phone, like, hey, can you check in on Nadia? Can you check her room? Is she home? So I go upstairs, I check Nadia's room, she's not there, and I'm like, Mom, what's going on? And she says, well, Nadia never came home.
22-year-old Nadia El-Dib lived in Calgary with her family. She was the third born of 4 sisters and was described as a vibrant, outgoing, and funny young woman with a great sense of humor. She loved dancing, singing, and having a good time. People just loved being around her. Nadia's family was originally from Lebanon, but moved to Canada in 1991 in search of greener pastures. Nadia and her siblings grew up in Montreal, Quebec, before moving to Calgary. At the time of this incident, Nadia was in her first year in college, studying to be a legal assistant. She also had dreams of becoming a lawyer someday.
She was very, progressive. She was very open-minded. She was very, women's rights, LGBTQ+ rights. So she was very much, wanted to fight for people's rights.
Nadia also had a passion for makeup and fashion, so much so that she was even nicknamed the Kim Kardashian of the family.
She had the beautiful long black hair, the dark features. She had amazing taste in fashion, and she did her makeup immaculate.
Nadia's favorite pastime was smoking shisha, which is a fruit-flavored tobacco which is heated, and then smoke goes through a water-filled pipe before being inhaled. It's a popular activity in Middle Eastern culture.
There's a lot of shisha bars in Calgary, and she liked to go to them because shisha bars mostly have people Middle Eastern people who go and hang out, so it was also her way of meeting friends.
On Saturday, March 24th, 2018, a day before she went missing, Nadia took a break from her studies to meet up with some friends at a local shisha joint, but she never came home. Her family got worried when they realized that she didn't come home. They tried calling her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Initially, her family thought that she had decided to spend the night over at her friend's place. So her sister, Rasha, went over to the friend's home to check if she was there, but she wasn't. Rasha knew at that moment that something bad had happened to her sister.
And I'm in the living room, and I just burst into tears because at that point I'm like, something is wrong. I have a gut feeling now that something is going on.
Nadia's friend told Rasha that at some point during the night, Nadia had run into her ex-boyfriend, 21-year-old Adam Bedahar. The two had dated for a short while in 2017, before Nadia broke things off when she started noticing some red flags about him. According to her sister, Adam had gotten super controlling and possessive of Nadia, telling her what to wear and who to talk to. After they broke up, Adam moved to another town and took a job at an oil patch. It's not clear whether he had tried to contact Nadia before they met at the shisha bar that night. According to Nadia's friend, Adam somehow convinced Nadia to go with him to some other bar so they could talk. But around 3:30 a.m., the friend received a concerning text from Nadia, telling her that Adam was refusing to take her back to her car so she could go home. That was the last time anyone heard from Nadia again. Nadia's sister Rasha found Adam's phone number and tried to call him, but he wasn't answering. So Rasha and 2 of Nadia's friends decided to retrace Nadia's movement that night. They went to the same shisha bar where Nadia's car was still parked in the back alley. That was already a bad sign, but what made things even more concerning, her overnight bag was inside the car.
Her stuff is in there, other than her purse. So I'm thinking like, this is odd. Like, why would her car still be here?
They managed to get a hold of one of Adam's friends who informed them that he had also been trying to contact Adam since the previous night because he had borrowed his car and didn't return it. Now Rasha was panicking, believing that her sister and Adam were probably in an accident or were in some kind of danger. The group decided to go over to Adam's house located in northeast Calgary to see if they would find them there. And as soon as they got there, they knew that something was wrong.
We get close to his house and I see a cop car and I don't think anything about it. And then we turn a corner and that's where there's like the 10-15 cop cars and I'm just freaking out.
So Rasha is panicking, thinking that her sister was involved in some sort of robbery or something. She approached one of the officers and began telling him about her missing sister and asking what was going on. Then a detective came, pulled her to the side, and began asking her all these questions about Nadia.
He's just questioning us like, what does Nadia look like? When was the last time you heard from her? Does she have any tattoos? Does she have any piercings? And I'm just like rambling all this information off.
At the time, it hadn't dawned on Rasha why the detective wanted all that information about Nadia. She thought that it was probably for the missing persons report. It wasn't until the detective told her that he was from the homicide unit that it finally clicked.
I pretty much just like scream and break down and fall to the ground and I'm just in hysterics, like, where is she? Like, first I was screaming, like, I want to go see her. And I'm like, what about Adam? Like, where's Adam? And they're like, we don't know where he is.
Yeah. The victim was Nadia El-Dib. An autopsy confirmed that she had been the victim of what investigators called a particularly violent attack, with over 40 jab wounds and bullet wounds. For her sister Rasha, the weight of this realization was unbearable. Imagine the terror Nadia must have faced before her death hit her like a wave. How could something so awful happen? Was Adam responsible for this, or had he been a victim too? And if he was behind it, why would he do something so unthinkable? Her mind was flooded with these painful questions as she struggled to make sense of it all. Then came the hardest, most heartbreaking moment of all, telling the rest of her family about the devastating news. Rasha had already been through so much processing her own grief, but now she had to face the unbearable task of breaking this to her loved ones. It's one thing to experience the pain yourself, but watching the shock and sorrow wash over the faces of those closest to you, that is a whole different kind of agony.
I couldn't say anything and I'm like, I'm sorry. And she's like, no. And I'm just repeating like, I'm so sorry, over and over again. And then eventually like my mom overhears the conversation and I hear her scream in the background.
Meanwhile, homicide detectives were working around the clock to piece together the events that led to Nadia's tragic death. They had already interviewed multiple people, and all signs pointed in one direction: Adam. He was the last person to see Nadia alive, and her body was found disturbingly close, right behind his house. That fact alone made him their prime suspect. Adam Bedahar, just 21 years old and originally from Algeria, wasn't the type of person anyone would have expected to be involved in something like this. He was one of 4 children and lived with his mother, Fatia, who only had good things to say about him. She described him as respectful, good-hearted, and always smiling. Adam wasn't just kind, he was hardworking too, holding down 2 or 3 jobs at a time. He had never been in trouble. But something changed. According to his mother, Adam's life began to unravel in February 2018 when he started complaining about severe headaches and dizziness. While she didn't go into details about it, Fatia mentioned that Adam had several medical tests lined up in April, including a psychiatric evaluation. Still, according to his mom, Adam never displayed any signs of being violent. Using surveillance footage and cell phone records, police were able to come up with a timeline of when they believed Nadia lost her life. CCTV cameras showed Nadia leaving the shisha bar with Adam at around 3 a.m. and heading towards the direction of his home. At 4 a.m., she texted her friend expressing her frustration that Adam refused to bring her back to her car.
We then have the phone call between Nadia's friend and Nadia, putting her and Adam alone together in the vehicle en route to Adam's home in the northeast. And then there is further CCTV that captures the vehicle turning in to the alleyway in behind the Bedahar residence. So we're able to put a pretty tight timeline together.
15 minutes later, police believe that Adam parked the car behind a home in the 1000 block of Maitland Drive and tried to make a move on Nadia. When she turned him down, he got angry and brutally attacked her with a knife, jabbing her and her throat. Despite being severely injured, Nadia managed to get away from the killer. But she didn't go far. The deranged monster chased after her and gunned her down in cold blood.
Bedahar stabbed Nadia approximately 40 times and cut her throat. Despite Nadia's injuries, Nadia escaped the vehicle before being shot by Bedahar and falling to the ground in a nearby backyard.
Surveillance footage captured 2 distinct muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness, perfectly matching forensic evidence that Nadia was on the ground when she was shot.
You could see in the darkness 2 figures exit the vehicle out the passenger door. It appears Nadia is exiting out the passenger door. The driver exits the vehicle, believed to be Adam, determined to be Adam, goes to the rear of the vehicle and retrieves what is a high-powered rifle. There is blood smears on the rear seat where the high-powered rifle was, consistent with that. At that point, we believe that Nadia had already been over 40 times. Her throat had been slit, and she was likely dying. She was then shot twice.
But here's the thing that makes this even more chilling. It turns out this was not a heat of the moment murder. Investigators learned that Adam had actually bought a semi-automatic rifle on March 10th, 2 weeks before the murder. Investigators believe that after borrowing his friend's car, Adam returned to his home to retrieve the weapon before meeting up with Nadia at the shisha bar that fateful night, which means that he intended to take her life if she didn't go along with what he wanted.
In reviewing the CCTV video from the shisha bar, it was eerie to watch Adam and Nadia together, Nadia having no idea the kind of danger she was in, and knowing at that point that Adam had a high-powered rifle already in the back seat of his vehicle.
The countrywide manhunt was launched for Adam, with every police unit being on the lookout for him.
Calgary police have issued a Canada-wide warrant for a 21-year-old man wanted in connection to this case. Adam Bedahar is now facing 1 count of first-degree murder.
Tracking Adam was not going to be an easy task because he always seemed to be a few steps ahead of the police. He knew that they could track him using his phone and bank card activities, so he ditched his phone and only used his bank card once to withdraw money he would need while on the run. He was constantly on the move, going from one town to another, ensuring that the police didn't get the chance to catch him. Despite being a wanted criminal and knowing that the police were tracking his movements, Adam couldn't stop talking to his mother and would call her every day from various payphones. With his mother's cooperation, police were able to track down the locations where he would call from, but by the time they got there, Adam would already be gone.
It was problematic because we were always a step behind him, always a few hours behind him, and he kept moving. We're pulling CCTV at those locations, trying to determine what any clothing changes, any appearance changes that he's made, trying to confirm what vehicle he's operating, if he's changing that, and trying anything that can give us had advantage.
The manhunt went on for several days, with Adam always being a few steps ahead of the police. Then, on March 29th, 4 days after the murder, police received reports that Adam had been spotted in a place called Evansburg. He was believed to be armed with a semi-automatic rifle and driving a dark blue 2004 Ford Explorer. At 5:15 p.m., a uniformed officer in a marked police car spotted a dark blue Ford Explorer. He followed the vehicle to Highway 22, trying to get the driver to pull over, but the driver refused and sped off. What followed was an intense, high-speed chase that covered about 87 miles and involved dozens of officers and police vehicles.
Okay, control advised 4 or 5 is now primary in a fully marked unit.
We were basically going down the highway in a staggered box formation, and we would call in updates as Bedahar's driving pattern changed, the vehicle condition changed.
The pursuit went on for 1 hour and 30 minutes. Several officers were placed at the intersections to keep off other drivers from the highway and to prevent Adam from escaping onto rural roads. During the pursuit, Adam had managed to evade spike belts before the fifth one damaged his tires. But still, this didn't stop him.
That's a hit on the spike belt. Get those spike belts out of the way, boys. Good job. His tire is gone. It's rolling down on the shoulder. And just under 70 kilometers an hour. I don't know how much more of that vehicle is going to stay on the road. It's shaking pretty bad.
When he realized that his car could no longer move, he made a 45-degree turn and stopped. This gave him a tactical advantage for what he was about to do next.
He is stopped. We're approaching.
So my goal at that time was to attempt to make contact with Bedahar, but I didn't have a chance. As I was putting my vehicle in park was when the first shot rang through Sergeant Topham's police car. And in the time it took for me to get to Sergeant Topham's police car, Bedahar had already put 3 rounds through that car.
When the pursuing officers saw him stopping, they probably thought that he had decided to give up and surrender, but they soon realized how mistaken they were. Witnesses at the scene later reported seeing a man step out of the Ford holding a rifle or machine gun. He dropped to one knee to take a firing stance, pointing directly at the police, like he knew what he was doing. The first shot was fired at the closest police vehicle, which had stopped about 60 feet away. An officer who was inside the vehicle was hit in the head and started bleeding profusely.
All I saw was his body hanging out of the driver's door, and his left arm was swinging. And it wasn't swinging like there was life to it, it was just dangling. And I could see the hole in the back of his head and just blood going all over the side of his patrol car door.
The other officers immediately took cover as 11 officers returned fire.
I remember feeling the concussions from his barrel because it was sticking around the rear of the Explorer. I can remember feeling that pressure, the concussions of pow, and you feel it.
The shootout lasted for 2 minutes, with officers firing 202 rounds at the suspect. At around 6:28 p.m., an officer traveling on the opposite side of the road confirmed that Adam was down.
Suspect's down. We need ambulance here right away.
The Ford Explorer was completely shattered. He had fired 10 rounds before he was killed. An autopsy found that he had suffered from multiple bullet wounds, with the most serious wounds being in his spine and neck. The semi-automatic rifle believed to have been used in Nadia's murder was recovered at the scene. According to the police, the rifle and its ammunition had the capacity to penetrate police soft body armor. The officer who had been hit in the head was Sergeant Bryant Tofan. Luckily, the injury turned out to be a glaze, and he was stitched up and sent home.
The bullet hit the back of my head on the left side, and I must have got my head down just low enough that it went across my scalp to my skull.
Another officer, Corporal Brandon Tobin, had also suffered several lacerations on his arm and neck caused by bullet fragments.
I felt something on my left shoulder back here. I remember it was hot and it was sharp, and it was just woof. It made me straighten up a little bit. I went to the local hospital and got some x-rays, and Turns out I had some bullet fragments in my right arm that are still there.
Investigators wanted to know Adam's motive for doing what he did. He had no previous criminal record, and his toxicology report showed there was no alcohol or drugs in his system, meaning that he knew exactly what he was doing. An independent investigation by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team found Adam was not firing just to provoke a reaction from the police, but he was doing it with every intention of killing or causing serious injury to the officers. As the community grappled with the devastating impact of the incident, many wondered if there was something that could have been done to prevent it. Although Adam and Nadia had not been dating, police considered it a case of DV. Nadia's sister Rasha described Adam as a disturbed young man who believed he had the right to murder because she exercised her right of taking ownership of her life, body, and soul by saying no to a man who was persistent on being with her.
This is a case of domestic violence, and the sole reason for my presence here today is to speak for Nadia so that she doesn't become another nameless statistic. She was a strong young woman who fought and refused a man, and that decision alone resulted in her death.
What do you think about this case? What could have been Adam's motive for killing Nadia? Let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button.